consequences are so feeble. This is not justice. These evil people have been found guilty of murder and have showed no remorse at all. We were promised a life sentence. The only people receiving a life sentence are Michael's family. The government must see that society is broken. Until there are some serious consequences to their actions, the antisocial element will continue their reign of terror. There has to be accountability. Perhaps the government should concentrate on our own war of terror, a war against the feral youths that are terrorising our communities. Places aren't bad, some people are bad. We cannot accept this is Britain 2009. These people took away the life of a good man, a father, a husband. True justice should be an eye for an eye. At the very least, life should mean life. These people should never be free to inflict their evil ways upon society again. There is no way this can be called justice.
And that was John Bayliss reporting. Now, who's going to host the Olympics after London? Let's go live to Copenhagen and James Pearce.
Yes, hello and welcome to Copenhagen. I can tell you that tension is really mounting. After 4 years of campaigning, the cities are about to find out who is going to host the 2016 Olympics. Let me first of all explain how it will work. There are 4 cities, as you said, which are going to be voted upon. There will be a vote. 106 IOC members are here. 97 actually are entitled to vote in the first round. I'll explain a little bit more about that later on. But what will happen is there will be a vote. Now, we're assuming that no city will get a majority. You need to get 50% plus 1 vote in the first round if there is a winner. If that doesn't happen, and that's what we're expecting, then 1 city will be eliminated. President Jacques Rogge, the president of the IOC, will announce which city has been eliminated. There will be another vote. Again, if no city gets a majority of 50% plus 1, there will be a vote again with just those 2 cities left. So there is plenty of excitement, plenty of drama and plenty of tension because this is a very close contest. The big question really is, what has been the influence today of the Obamas? President Obama coming into Copenhagen for just a few hours. His wife Michelle has been here for a couple of days. They spoke at the presentation. They seemed to make quite an impact, but was it enough to make Chicago the first North American city to host the Summer Olympics since 1996? Well, we'll go live to the voting room in the next minute or so when the voting is due to start. But first of all, let me introduce you to the man who's going to be alongside me throughout this process, who's going to guide us through it. Michael Payne, who's a former marketing director of the IOC and has been working for the Rio bid throughout this campaign. So excuse the odd cheer from Michael if Rio does well over the course of the next few minutes. First of all, Michael, just try and put into words the emotions of all those people who have been involved in the process right now.
It is a terrible moment now. They've had years and years of work where they've been traveling around the world trying to collect the votes, working on the presentations. It was very nerve-wracking for each of the 4 cities today. You could often see it with their presentations when they were making it. And now they just have to sit back and wait for the moment when President Rogge will finally come out and say, we have a winner. And then they have to wait again another half hour until he opens the envelope at the end of the IOC show.
You've been working for Rio, as I said, but we can all be honest now, the IOC voters are locked away in a room, so you have no more influence over them. So give us your genuine perspective of where we are right now.
I have seen many votes over the last 20 years, and I've got to say, I think this is the closest. I've been able to call quite a few of them, but last night, I don't think you could find anybody in the IOC hotel who was willing to call this vote, even willing to call who's going to be in the final, because there's always the risk that there's a surprise in the first round, that even a favourite can suddenly drop out because they haven't got enough of supporters to get through that critical first round.
Let's take you live now down to the room where President Rogge is addressing the voters. Let's listen to what he's saying.
Paragraph 3.2 of the bylaw to Rule 34. Messrs. Thomas Bach, Chairman of the Scrutineers, Francisco Elizalde and Frank Fredericks are appointed as scrutineers. I now pass the floor to the Director General, Mr. Urs Lacote.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are now going to draw the 4 numbers for the identification of each of the 4 candidate cities during the voting procedure. This will be done under the supervision of Mr. Thomas Bach, Chairman of the Scrutineers. These numbers will appear on the screen and will be used during the entire voting procedure. I will now ask the Chairman of the Scrutineers, Mr. Thomas Bach, to proceed with the draw. He will be assisted by Mrs. Claudia Bockel and Mr. Daesung Moon. Both of them are representatives of the athletes. Please.
Number 8.
So what's going on here is really a fairly simple process, just working out which city is going to be where on the keypad, as it were. So this is not going to have any great impact on determining which city is going to host the Olympics.
For the city of Tokyo.
Chance for the IOC, there's Tokyo being drawn, just a chance for the IOC to, of course, make sure that this contest is scrupulously fair so that no one knows exactly what number on the keypad the cities are going to be until they actually get down to the voting process itself. Michael's still alongside me. Tokyo, the first name drawn out, and Tokyo are considered the outsiders in this contest.
They are considered the outsiders. I think the general view is, even though they had a very strong technical bid, that the IOC probably wasn't ready to go back to Asia so soon after Beijing, a very successful games in China.
Madrid, the second one out, they gave me a chance to talk about Madrid, which again have been seen to be the outsiders. I'm told that in the last hour their odds have plunged at the bookmakers. People have been having a bit of punt on Madrid after their presentation.
Well, you shouldn't forget that Madrid only lost the 2-12 vote by one single vote. If Madrid had gone through to the final, most people thought that Madrid would have actually beaten London in the final. They have a very effective lobbying team led by the former IOC president Juan Antonio Samaranch, and he's still able to pull in the favours, and you learned never to underestimate his influence. So they've always been a dark horse in this race.
I know you'd have been working with the Rio bid this morning, so preparing for their presentation, which came after the Chicago presentation, but you had a chance to see the Obamas, to see the Chicago presentation?
Yes, no, you sort of watched each of the presentations. Obviously, there is nothing that you can do to change your presentation at that stage, although it's important to follow the questions because you see what the mood is, what sort of questions the members are asking.
And what did you make of the Obamas?
I thought, obviously, for the IOC to have the President of the United States come here and his wife is an incredible prestige and testament to the strength of the movement and how countries are wanting to host the Games. Personally, I found the actual sort of videos and presentations not quite as much sort of pizzazz, a little bit flat.
Okay, let's listen in back into the room again.
Representatives are here to monitor the accurate implementation of the system. The names of those members who must refrain from taking part in the vote pursuant to paragraph 5.1 of the bylaw to Rule 18 of the Olympic Charter will be communicated to the session immediately before each round of voting. Nationals from the country of a candidate city which has been eliminated can vote in further rounds. The votes of members not taking part in the ballot or who abstain and blank or spoiled votes will not be taken into account in the calculation of the required majority. Voting by proxy is not permitted. The President elects not to exercise his right to vote. However, he reserves his right in order to break a deadlock. If no candidate city obtains a majority of the votes cast, the candidate city obtaining the least number of votes will be eliminated, and additional rounds of voting, as may be necessary, will be held between the cities still in contention until a city obtains the majority of votes cast. In the preliminary rounds, if no city has a majority of the votes cast and if there is a tie between two or more cities with the least number of votes, the session will vote again with respect to the cities that are tied. The city obtaining the least number of votes in such round will be eliminated. Should there still be a tie, the President will decide how to proceed. If there is a tie in the final round of voting, the session will vote again. Should there still be a tie, the President will decide how to proceed. The results of each round of voting will be communicated in writing to the President by the scrutineers. The President will then announce the results to the session as follows. For as long as no city is elected, the President will not communicate the number of votes obtained by the cities in contention, and when the elected city has been announced by the President, the complete results of the voting will be made available. The result of the election will be recorded in the form of minutes signed by the scrutineers. The closed envelope containing the name of the winning city will be kept in the custody of the chairman of the scrutineers and will be presented to the President at the announcement ceremony. The President will open the envelope at the announcement ceremony and read out the result. I should like now to make sure that each member has received a voting box. Is there anybody who has not received one? This is not the case. The names and voting numbers of the 4 cities are on the screen. And in a moment I shall declare the vote open. Please note that their voting numbers will not change if there is more than one round of voting. The names of the members who, in accordance with paragraph 5.1 of the bylaw to Rule 18 of the Olympic Charter, may not take part in the first round of voting are, in view of Chicago candidature, Mrs. Anita de France and Mr. Jim Easton. In view of Tokyo candidature, Mr. Chihara Igaya and Mr. Sunichiro Okano. In view of the Rio candidature, Mr. Jao Avalanche and Mr. Carlos Nussmann. And in view of the Madrid candidature, Mr. Juan Antonio Samaranch Jr. These members are asked to hand in their voting boxes. All those who wish, the President is also handing back his voting box. All those who wish to vote for Chicago are invited to press key number 4 and then the key marked valid. All those who wish to vote for Tokyo are invited to press key number 8 and then the key marked valid. All those who wish to vote for Rio de Janeiro are invited to press key number 7 and then the key marked valid. All those who wish to vote for Madrid are invited to press key number 9 and then the key marked valid. If you wish to abstain, press 0 and then the key marked valid. If you press the wrong key, if the message error appears on your small screen, or if you wish to correct your choice, press the key marked core for correction, and then the key you wish to press And finally, press the key marker valid. You may do this as long as the vote is open. I now request the opening of the vote. The vote is open.
Is the moment the IOC members have the chance to make their first vote, if there is indeed going to be a further ballot. You heard a very clear explanation for how it works, but this is their first vote. If no city gets a majority of votes in this round, we will have a second round, but one city will be eliminated. There are 97 voters. Again, you heard a pretty good explanation, because if you're an IOC member from a country that has a city involved in this voting process, then you're not allowed to vote. And the President, Jacques Rogge, also, by tradition, abstains from the process. He only gets involved if there is a tie at the end, which is the absolute nightmare scenario for him. He'll be very pleased if there is a winner at the end of this process. I'm sure you will see a broad smile after a final vote when he is told that there is a winner. So now we have the vote closed. There'll be a little wait now, because you can see the scrutineers who are there. They will look through the results, make sure everything is okay. So you'll have a wait, I would suggest, of a minute or two. And then what they will do is take a note over to President Rogge saying what the situation is. So what will happen is, if one city is to be eliminated and there is no majority, President Rogge will be given literally just the name of that city. He will read that name out, and that city will be eliminated. It's fairly brutal, I have to say, Michael, isn't it, having waited so long?
It is brutal, and as I said before, going into this round, truth be told, actually any one of the four cities could go out in this first round if they haven't been able to shore up enough of their block votes to get them through. It's always called the curse of the first round, and it has everybody very nervous.
So geography can play an important part in this first round?
You would expect that a significant number of the Asian members would stand behind Tokyo. Significant number of the Europeans stand behind Madrid. That there is sort of, in the first round, always some sympathy blocks.
But the bookmakers, most people here would say that the likelihood is it's Tokyo. If it's not Tokyo eliminated here, it will be considered a surprise.
Yes, I think...
here we go. Let's be quiet and see what happens when President Rogge receives this piece of paper.
Well, one can say there will at least be another round, because it's a single piece of paper. Only once it's in a sealed envelope do we know the voting is finished.
Box given 95. Participants 94. Abstention nil. Void nil. Valid ballots 94. The city of Chicago, having obtained the least number of votes, will not participate in the next round.
We shall now proceed immediately with another round of vote. We shall now proceed immediately with another round of vote. We shall now proceed immediately with another round of vote. We shall now proceed immediately with another round of vote. We shall now proceed immediately with another round of vote. We shall now proceed immediately with another.
There is a lot of confusion, I think, even in the hall, probably a lot of surprise there. Nobody was expecting Chicago to go out in the first round. We'll speak more to Michael Payne, who's alongside me. I can tell you there was a very, very loud gasp here. That is the situation in Chicago. I'm sure they are stunned there. Our correspondent, Paul Adams, is in Chicago. Paul, the reaction.
James, I am standing in Daley Plaza in the center of Chicago, staring out at a sea of open mouths. There is a total deathly hush that has fallen over this plaza, which just a few minutes ago was full of people cheering and anticipating at least that the city would go through to another round of voting. But people are just staring at the screen in absolute silence, with their mouths just hanging open. A sense of total disbelief here.
Paul, your assessment for what this means for the presidency of Barack Obama, having made such an impassioned plea today to the IOC?
Well, look, his people were aware, clearly, that there was a certain political gamble in this. Domestically, the president can ill afford little extra chinks in his reputation and his standing. So there was clearly a gamble in going and coming away empty-handed. But his advisors have said that if the president was worried about losing the presidential election a year ago, that he simply wouldn't have stood, and that the fear of failure should never enter into the calculation. Plus, if Chicago had lost by a couple of votes, there was a feeling that perhaps he could have been criticized for not being there to give it the extra push. So his people will say, look, he had to be there, he had to add his presidential effort to this, but clearly this is a blow, and there will be people back here who will say that his prestige has lost a little bit of luster as a result of this.
Well, we talked to Paul. Let's just have a look at what's happening now inside the hall, because they have had now another ballot. So the scrutineers are now having a look at the result. That ballot is now closed, and so we will in the next minute or so get a result. But let me bring in Michael Payne as well with your reaction.
Well, as I said before, the curse of the first round, any one of the four cities could go out. I know last week, talking to the Chicago crowd, they were nervous about that first round vote, but obviously felt that with President Obama coming, that there will be enough to get them through. There will be another round again, because you can see the scrutineer there just with a sheet of paper. It's not a sealed envelope, so we're through to a final round.
Okay, Paul Adams, thank you very much for now. Let's wait and see which city is going to be the second city to be eliminated from this contest.
Box given 97, participants 96, abstention 1, void nil, valid ballots 95. The city of Tokyo, having obtained the least number of votes, will not participate in the further round.
We shall now proceed immediately with the final round of voting. The following candidates remain in contention: Rio de Janeiro and Madrid. The voting numbers are still the same as shown.
So there we have Tokyo eliminated as the second city. Michael, that would have been the expected second option.
Indeed. It's funny, most people were expecting a Chicago-Rio final, but several people always said, be careful of Madrid. It could easily be a Madrid-Rio final, which is exactly what we now see.
Well, you have been working with Rio. You have looked through all the mathematics. How do you assess Rio's chances now with Madrid up against them in the final here?
Well, this really challenges the analysts, because you've got two Latin cities feeding in the same pool of voters, and now trying to work out where would the American voters have gone, where would the loyalists of Tokyo have gone. I think it's still, anything is open. You've already had the big surprise of Chicago. There is still room to be a big surprise if Madrid was to beat Rio.
Okay, so let me just explain what is happening now. We have a final vote. There will be a winner as long as there's not a tie after this vote. We won't actually have the winner announced to us. But in the meantime, while we wait and see what happens in the hall, let's go to Tokyo. Tokyo eliminated from this contest. Roland Burke is there. Roland, the reaction in Tokyo?
Well, great disappointment here in Tokyo. For a few minutes, the hall was pretty electrified, to be honest, when Chicago was knocked out first. Some people here feared that this city could be eliminated in the first round, but really Tokyo was the underdog right from the beginning. Although it has great infrastructure, had the money as well, there simply wasn't the enthusiasm among people here. When the IOC did a survey, just 56% of people in Tokyo wanted the games, so perhaps no surprise that it's not coming here.
Okay, Roland, thank you very much for now. So for those people who are just joining us, let me recap, let me make this absolutely clear. We now have a final vote in this process taking place at the moment. The IOC members have a choice to make between Rio de Janeiro and Madrid for the right to host the 2016 Olympics. I was saying earlier that Madrid's odds had shortened dramatically in the last half hour. When Antonio Samaranch, the former president of the IOC, was involved in their presentation, impressed many people. Madrid, with the dark horses 4 years ago, very nearly upset London. Michael Payne, they've upset Chicago and Tokyo, and possibly Rio as well here today.
Yeah, that would be a first to have the games, third consecutive games in Europe. It would be a first in the 100-year tradition of the IOC. But as you've always learned with Olympic voting, anything is possible.
So what you should keep an eye on here now is look at the scrutineers, because in theory there should be an envelope, is that right? Now there should be, if there's a result, we will see an envelope which will be sealed.
Yeah, in theory, and as you said earlier, the doomsday scenario for the president is they announced that it is equal voting.
Okay.
I think if that
Let me just say,
happens-
this is Madrid. These are the celebrations in Madrid we can see, actually. We're not actually watching the hall, but in Madrid, of course, people are ecstatic. But carry on, sorry, explaining the process.
If it is equal, I would expect the president himself will decide not to vote, but ask the session to vote again, and to keep voting until there is a result. He will do everything possible to avoid voting himself.
Well, at the moment, of course, we don't know that that's the case. We will wait and see what announcement is made. That is Thomas Bach, who's tipped to be perhaps a future president of the IOC. Maybe he'll be sitting in Jacques Rogge's footsteps. Someone says Thomas Bach, and we're watching here on a different monitor, who's screening. But let's listen now to Jacques Rogge.
The host city for the Games of the 31st Olympiad in 2016. The election is over and will be announced later on.
Excuse me, I have just an information, if you allow. All members, please stay in the session room, and at the appointed time...
So there we
you will
have
be
it,
led-
confirmation from the President, Jacques Rogge, that we do have a winner. There is no tie. The IOC members have elected a city to host the Olympics in 2016. Now, what happens now is a formal ceremony starts in pretty much exactly 1 hour. And in about 1 hour and 20 minutes, you will see that famous moment when the envelope is opened. Very briefly, Michael, who's going to win? One word, quickly. Rio.
I'm a Rio fan, my money's on Rio.
Money on Rio, but Rio or Madrid, all from Copenhagen for now.
So that was James Pearce reporting live from Copenhagen. Extraordinary decisions emerging from there in the last 20 minutes. A lot of money was on Chicago to maybe even win that bid. They're the first city to go, and Tokyo has followed them. So we're down to those last two, Rio de Janeiro and Madrid, and those are live pictures coming in from both of those cities. People in Copacabana being entertained by a band performing on the beach in front of masses of people who have gathered there to wait and see if South America gets its first ever Olympic Games. And then on the right you can see the scenes in the Spanish capital, Madrid, something of a dark horse this time round. Of course, they came quite close to upsetting London when the decision was made 4 years ago. Well, those are the scenes in the two cities still in the fray.
Yes, and quite a shock that Chicago was voted out. The first round of voting, Chicago voted out. We know that the president and his wife, Barack Obama, had flown over there specially today to make quite an impassioned speech about why their city should have it, but it was pretty resounding. Chicago out in the first round, and I think these pictures are coming into us from Chicago. They were expecting a party. It was extraordinary watching those pictures. When the announcement was made, this crowd just stood there in silence for a good minute or so, taking in that news. But as I said, President Barack Obama and his wife went over to make a very impassioned speech, both of them about why the Olympics should come to Chicago in 2016. The Olympics are not going to either Chicago or Tokyo. Madrid and Rio are awaiting their fate. We'll bring it to you at 5:50 tonight.
Indeed, we will have that here live for you, rest assured, and we hope to speak to somebody in Chicago in the next little while as well. Now to other matters.